sitting in Meredith's spot.
Meredith came to sit down and he looked up and said, I am, I guess.
No.
Here we go.
Good evening and welcome to the Carnegie Town Hall. This meeting of the Planning Commission will begin with a few introductory remarks. The City of Sioux Falls Planning Commission serves as an advisory board to the City Council. It is the responsibility of the Planning Commission to consider and make recommendations on land use and zoning matters. Actions taken tonight on conditional use permits are final unless appealed to the City Council in writing within 5 days. And any actions taken tonight on final development plan design review or minor amendments are final. Any recommendations made on preliminary subdivision plan requests tonight will be referred to the City Council for final actions at the third council meeting of this month or at the first council meeting of next month if associated with a zoning or major amendment. Any recommendations made on rezoning requests, major amendments, future land use amendments, or ordinance amendments tonight will be referred to the City Council for final action at the first council meeting of next month. Council meetings are held at 7 p.m. here in the Carnegie Town Hall and are televised. The Planning Commission will first approve the consent agenda and then the regular agenda. In order to place certain non-controversial items on the Commission's consent agenda, Planning staff and the Planning Commission apply the following criteria. First, the request conforms with the Shape Sioux Falls 2035 Comprehensive Plan. Second, Planning staff recommends approval of the request. Third, there are no audience members present or written comments received in opposition to the request. And fourth, the application meets all conditions and requirements of the Sioux Falls zoning ordinance. For the regular agenda, the following normal public hearing procedure will be followed for each item. By first requesting planning staff to present a brief report on that item. Second, the petitioner or a representative will be requested to come forward and make a statement or answer questions. After the petitioner has spoken, anyone from the audience who wishes to address the agenda item shall be recognized. Then the Planning Commission will discuss the matter further and take appropriate action. We ask that anyone addressing the Planning Commission move to the podium microphone and identify themselves for the record. Please limit your comments to less than 5 minutes. As a courtesy to everyone here tonight, we ask that you please either turn off or silence your electronic devices. This meeting is being telecast on CityLink and will be rebroadcast Friday at 7 p.m., Saturday at 10 a.m., and Wednesday at 1 a.m. Thank you for your cooperation. Good evening. Welcome to Carnegie Hall. I call to order this regular meeting of the City Planning Commission. Before we get started, I would like to remind commissioners that Tamara is once again assisting us with her bookkeeping. If when you make a motion, or second. If you would identify yourself, it'd be greatly appreciated. In votes, if on an approval vote, you won't need to identify yourself. On a no vote, if you'd also identify yourself for Tamara's sake, we'd appreciate it. At this time, the Planning Commission will approve the consent agendas. This evening, the consent agendas are: number 1, approval of the July 11, 2012 minutes of the regular meeting. Number 2 are plats. Number 3 is a conditional use permit in the C4 Planned Commercial District to allow an on-sale alcohol establishment use at 3100 West 12th Street. Number 4 is a conditional use permit in the C4 Planned Development District to allow retail, trade, and service, including gas dispensing, on a parcel greater than 1 acre in size at 3400 South Grange Avenue. Number 5 is a permitted special use in Subarea E River Crossing Planned Development District to allow an on-sale alcohol establishment use at 2209 West 57th Street. Number 6 is a final development plan in Subarea G Dolly Farm Village Planned Development District to allow for furniture, retail, trade, and service use at South Dakota Highway 100 and South Dakota 42. Number 7 is a final development plan in Subarea C Garden Village Planned Development District to allow medical office use at 6908 South Lindcrest Place. Number 8 is a final development plan and minor amendment in Subarea A Willow Creek Planned Development District to allow an increase in density and building height to construct a multifamily residential building at West 18th Street and Willow Creek Place. Number 9 is a final development plan in Subarea K Bentwood Village Planned Development District to allow townhomes at 81st Street and Beale Avenue. Are there any objections from the audience for any of the items listed on the consent agenda? Jeff.
Good evening, Mr. Planning Commissioner. Jeff Schmidt, representing planning staff. These first 9 items are on consent at this point, and we have had one concern on item number 9 that they'd like to read this into the regular agenda, so we'd like to remove number 9 from the consent agenda and move it to the regular agenda. Item number 6 has been deferred for 1 month, so that one also would need to have a motion to be moved off this agenda. The other items, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8 would still remain on the consent agenda. Unless we hear from anybody else in the audience this evening, those items would be able to be made as one motion and approved this evening.
Thank you, Jeff. Anyone else have any comments regarding the consent agenda? If not, I would look for planning commissioners. Any comments on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I would look for a motion regarding the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve the consent agenda with item 6 deferred and item 9 moved to the regular agenda. Commissioner Sershin.
Second, Schmidt.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor will signify by saying yes.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. If you were here for the consent agenda and your item has been addressed, you're excused.
That was easy. How's that? Well, we'll see.
Is there a motion to approve the regular agenda? Mr. Chair, I'd move approval of the regular agenda. Larson.
Gaspar, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? That would be with moving item number 9 to the regular agenda, and we will hear that one first. All in favor will signify by saying yes.
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 All opposed? Regular agenda items are approved. Russ, are you going to be doing item number 9 for us this evening?
Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission, members of the Sioux Falls City audiences, my name is Russ Sorensen, representing the City Planning Office on various items this evening. Item number 9 is a final development plan in Sub-Area K of the Bentwood Village Plan Development Zoning District. The purpose is to construct 4 plex townhomes for a total of 48 residential units on 12 lots. The property is approximately a little over 4 acres in size. And in May, a little history, in May of 2011, a major amendment was approved to adjust the sub-area boundaries J and K to increase development capacity for the townhomes up to 4 units attached. This is the first final development plan request within the Bentwood Planned Development District. Sub-area K regulations are applicable, whereby uses include those uses allowed as permissive, permitted special and conditional uses in the RD residential zoning district. The proposed townhome uses can be compatible with the PD, as the proposed final development plan depicts building elements and scale that are consistent with the surrounding existing and proposed developments. We had one phone call received today regarding a neighbor that had made inquiries about fire access and the phased development of these 4 plexes being constructed. If you recall, it's located directly to the west of the existing Explorer Elementary School. And so they wanted to have some kind of assurances through the development review process that the roads are going to be constructed, the fire access is going to be maintained, and so forth. We did have a conversation via conference call this afternoon with the fire marshal, Mr. Dean Lanier, to address that issue, and there did not seem to be any other questions or objections at that time. The applicant is here this evening, as well as the neighbor that would like to address the item before you this evening. Staff is recommending approval of the final development plan because the subject application is in conformance with the Plan Development District regulations, and it will not negatively impact the surrounding properties. We recommend approval subject to conditions. Prior to the issuance of building permits, a landscape plan will be required to be approved by the planning director. Second, that prior to the issuance of building permits, an adjacent pedestrian crosswalk to Beale Avenue is needed for the existing Explorer Elementary School. The city's path committee would review and determine that specific location from this development to the east to the Explorer Elementary School. That concludes staff's report, unless there are questions.
Thank you, Russ. Commissioners, would there be any questions for Russ?
Thank you.
Seeing none, is the petitioner here?
Hello, Brady Hyde with Empire Homes.
Hello, Brady.
How are you?
Is there anything you can add to
Not necessarily. As far as the phases, Russ brought that up. The first phase will consist of 16 units. Probably the next phase, another 8 to 16 units. We're fully aware at the time we reached 30 units, with discussions from I believe Frank Atine at the fire department, we'll have to have a secondary access. So I think those discussions have all taken place, and everyone's made aware that once we hit that number, we'll have to have the secondary access for the fire department.
Okay, very good. Any questions from the commission? Seeing none, thank you, Brady.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here this evening that would like to speak to item number 9?
Good evening. My name is Brian Jackson. I am a resident of the Sterling Estates neighborhood, which would be directly south of Explorer, south of 82nd Street. Do we have the aerial Basically, I have no concerns or anything with the type of property being built by Mr. Hyde in this certain area. The concern, and as I've had conversation with Mr. Sorensen, would be, as you can tell by the picture that's up there, the Beale Avenue, which would border the area on the east, doesn't go very far. And at this point in time, I understand that Phase 1 will only involve 16 units with it, and that once we get to the 30-unit item, there would have to be a secondary entrance or access for the fire department, which I would call that as issue A, and then there's an issue B. In discussion or a conversation with the fire marshal today on the phone, he said as long a secondary access could be anything that basically could handle a 75-ton fire truck, which could be crushed rock, gravel, etc. So that is a concern if something were to happen in that area. The second one, of course, as you see, is 82nd Street feeds into Hughes Avenue, and directly to the east of the school there is Platinum Valley Park, which is hosted to numerous practices for youth football, youth soccer, things along that line. So the concern that we have right now is you're looking to potential of having 30 units, additional, let's say 60 people, and they're only access to and from their residence, in addition to any construction that might be going on at the time, is 82nd Street to South of Beale. I understand that with the IDP that was originally put together, there would be an outlet that would be Beale connecting to 77th Street, which would be to the north, I would say approximately a quarter mile. The concern, of course, being if this were 5 or 6 years ago, a contractor or developer would come in, they would put the infrastructure in and then develop at that point in time. Given what's happened in the economy and financing restrictions, et cetera, what you may find is it's going to be more piecemeal together. Whereas Mr. Hyde might build this portion, I could go and develop another portion, and we just don't know at what point, are we talking 3 years, 5 years, before the secondary access that may be in excess of what the fire department might require as far as access to the area. So probably a little behind the 8 ball when it comes down to this, but if there was any future amendments that would come from this Bentwood Estates as they develop, we'd like to see some consideration for the traffic flow to have more of an outlet with that. Additional history you have to remember is that Louise Avenue does have a median that runs down the center of it, so any north access has to be accessed by 77th Street or by 85th Street if you would like to proceed north towards that. I guess that right now, let me check my records here. I think that's what I have to say, and any questions if I can answer. Otherwise, thank you for your time.
Brian, hang on just a second. Thank you. Would there be any questions from any of the commissioners? Brian, when you had the visit today with the fire marshal, he explained the rules and regulations that he kind of oversees. Did that put you at ease as far as?
Somewhat. I mean, like I said, a lot of it's going to go back more towards the traffic. I mean, the school being in that area, of course, exacerbates the issue with it all. And buses, and even with the busing that goes on, there's numerous parents that live to the north of where the school is in the Platinum Valley edition who choose to drive their kids to school. And, like I said, a lot of it is just it's congesting everything in one point in time. And what we don't see with this, and if you went on the original IDP, there was no outlet for where Mr. Hyde was going to construct his townhomes. The original IDP didn't have access onto Beale Avenue. It went to a Hanson Avenue, I believe, and then curved into 77th Street, and at that time would, on the plan, of course, diverge to either Tallgrass to the west or Louise Avenue through 77th Street on the east. And so I think the concern lies, like I said, we all knew when we bought our land in that area or bought our homes, expansion was going to happen at some point in time. But what we're looking at is times have changed, and we might need to look at the fact that we might need a developer, as they're proceeding to, as part of their process, build an outlet that would allow for the future expansion, maybe take the construction traffic and come in from a different area. That won't just be going past the school all day long, whether it be concrete trucks or sheetrock trucks or lumber trucks, anything along that line. We all know that the Harrisburg schools are busting at the seams, so I mean this school, the Explorer School, from my understanding, is probably the one that's probably the most full. We already have a temporary unit that's located out back that they have for classroom use, and until they can catch up with the school. So I mean, diverting that traffic away from the elementary age children. I mean, the kids go out and do the crossing guard thing in the morning, but and everyone tries to be cognitive of what's around there. But going forward with that, that's what we'd like to, or I as a neighbor and some of our other neighbors, I would assume, would like to see if a developer was going to continue expansion, that one of the first criteria that you might require of them would be to get 77th Street and this Beale Avenue to help just ease the restrictions.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
I don't believe so. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else here this evening that would like to address item number 9?
Good evening. Brent Antonin, 3124 West Auburn Hills Court. I'm the developer. A couple of questions or thoughts that I had on this is, number one, I only have the property that's on the west side of Beale, and so this isn't one developer that's doing this project. I'd love to see 77th in tomorrow as well, and I think Chuck would too. But we're kind of at the mercy of what other property owners are doing. And we're certainly with the understanding that we have to comply with the fire regulations of 30 units and have a secondary access. I think that Hanson Place as a short-term fix is something that we'd look at doing with the fire, simply because we can put a gate across there, we can put a chain on it. The only people that have access to using that as a secondary access would be the fire department.
Brian, I'm sorry I didn't catch your last name.
Brent Antonin.
Okay. Any questions for Brent? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here this evening that'd like to address item number 9? Seeing none, Chair would entertain a motion on item number 9.
I'll make a motion to approve item number 9 with the 2 stipulations as stated. Schmidt.
We have a motion. Would there be a second?
Pearson, second.
Discussion. Seeing no discussion, one quick question for you, Jeff. When a plan like this is submitted, this goes through a number of different departments. Engineering would be one, if I'm not mistaken, as far as traffic. If that were to be a concern from the engineering department, that is something that would have been noted to us in our report?
That's correct, and also, as both applicants discussed, it will be something that they're continuing to address as they move forward with their subdivision plans. So we have a subdivision process. We have a preliminary plan, a developer's engineering plan, and a construction plan that they have to complete as they proceed forward to loop their utilities and get their infrastructure in. So that will all be taken care of as they move through the process.
Okay. But at this point, if engineering doesn't have a problem with the traffic at this
It meets
point,
our standards. Correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. We've had a motion and a second. All in favor will signify by saying yes.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Item number 10. Commissioner Larson is going to excuse himself from item number 10.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, the audience at home, my name is Russ Sorensen, again, with the City of Sioux Falls Planning Office, representing item 10. Item 10, the applicant is Sanford USD Medical Center, and they are requesting a rezoning from the RS2 and RD residential districts to Sub-Area A of the Sanford USD Medical Center Plan Development Zoning District. The purpose of this rezoning is to allow expansion of healthcare, research, and education and associated parking facilities. The general area, as you can see on your screen, is bordered by 18th Street, on the north, 22nd Street on the south, and from Menlo Avenue on the east, or on the west, to Prairie Avenue on the east. Approximate size of this rezoning is 8 acres. The zoning purpose and under history, the Sanford USD Medical Center has experienced numerous additions since its creation in 1993. This is the applicant's third major midtown rezoning in 4 years. A rezoning, if you recall, north of 17th Street was done in 2008. Another rezoning was done from 22nd Street to 26th Street between Grange and Colville Avenue in 2009. The campus is approximately 91 acres in size, equivalent to 44 city square blocks. The applicant is requesting this rezoning of 8 acres, approximately 5-block area, to allow medical campus expansion, including associated parking. Sanford Health owns all but 13 properties in this rezoning request, approximately 50 homes within the subject 5-block area. In terms of the park, for Menlo Park, since the city has heard from several neighborhoods, their neighborhood could express concern that the park would be going away if this rezoning is based on Sanford's expansion. And the City of Sioux Falls is not including this land that is owned by the city for the park within the Sanford Planned Development Zoning District at this time. Another question that we've heard from some of the neighbors is relative to taxes. Is the city concerned about losing the property taxes from this rezoning action? We're not concerned in terms of the zoning does not change the property values, nor does it the properties that pays taxes. Is that a concern? Sanford remains one of our city's largest tax entities within Minnehaha County. Also this evening we have the Minnehaha County Director for Equalization here to address any tax questions that may arise this evening from the Planning Commission. The Sanford Health, in conformance with the recently adopted notification requirements, has provided communication to the property owners, including the 13 private property owners within the rezoning boundary area. That meeting was held on July 25th, and the applicant should be prepared to address any outcomes of that meeting. The Planning Office has not received any requests from the 13 property owners requesting to be removed from this rezoning request at this time. Should we receive any requests this evening during the public hearing process, we do have forms that could be signed by those property owners and to remove themselves or opt themselves out of the rezoning request. In terms of access, there's local streets of 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st, and 22nd Streets from Menlo, Waltz, and Prairie Avenues would be included for access. There is a bus route number 2, that has 3 stops at 18th and Grange, 21st and Grange, and all the way down to 26th and Grange, and there are 2 shelters within that area. The city planning staff has received calls that have been informational for the most part in nature. At this time, as I indicated earlier, we're not aware of any of the 13 private property owners within the rezoning area who have requested to opt out of this rezoning. Because the subject application maintains the ability for residential uses within the sub-area, and it helps define a future direction from the Sanford existing campus to the east. For medical campus expansion areas, staff is recommending approval of this rezoning request. That concludes our staff report, unless you have questions.
Commissioners.
I have a question of you, Russ. Let's say I own a property within this proposed rezoning. I plan to stay there, so I don't, what's the effect of my property being in or out of the zoning if I continue to stay there?
If you continue to stay there as a resident, the existing zoning for sub-area A of the USD Medical Campus for Sanford allows for residential uses. If you want to obtain a building permit to re-roof your house, put up a fence or a building addition within the zoning ordinance and the city's regulations, you can do so. There's nothing that would prohibit you from doing so.
And no effect on my property taxes or my evaluation of my property taxes.
As we indicated, that the sales dictate the property as for taxes. And again, I would defer any specific questions with taxes to the Director of Equalization for Minnehaha County, Kyle Herseth.
Thank you, Russ. I have no further questions.
Russ, what was his name?
Kyle Herseth.
Any other questions for Russ? Russ, thank you.
The applicant is here, as well as I'm sure some of the neighbors.
I'm going to ask the applicant to come up and visit with us.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for allowing us to speak to this request. My name is Orland Cheddar. I'm Vice President of Facilities and Planning at Sanford Health. The description that Mr. Sorensen provided for you was very complete. I would like to talk for just a moment about the increasing demand for health care in this region and at our campus, which is the primary purpose for our request to expand our campus. We have worked closely with city planning to discuss options in terms of what direction our campus grows, recognizing that growth on our campus, frankly, is inevitable. It will continue to grow as we provide additional services, including specialty services that patients used to have to travel long distances, either to Minneapolis, Rochester, Omaha, other destinations for care, that we're now able to provide here because of the continued growth and the recruitment of physicians. We recently opened our Sanford Heart Hospital at the intersection of 18th and Grange. That building opened in March of this year. We have seen increased volumes of patients as a result of that new facility. And frankly, that growth is also prompting the need for us to expand our campus. In terms of why now and why this direction, again, I think that the timing, as you know, for a rezoning request actually takes several months. It's a process by which we submit application. Following the application process, we have public meetings, which we've done. And then, of course, the next step is our appearance before this group tonight. And depending on your vote and outcome, likely meeting in September with City Council. Our greatest need currently is to provide additional parking. One of the issues that we were reminded of and aware of in our public meeting is the fact that as our campus grows, we continue to spill out into residential areas with people parking in residential streets, etc. And in order for us to be able to provide adequate parking for both our employees and our guests, we need to expand that parking. We also have been in discussion without any specific plans on a particular building about the possibility of building a clinic facility, again, to support our main campus. We anticipate that none of these plans or programs would go into effect prior to sometime early spring of 2013. Again, primarily because of the length of the process that this takes, and also we will once again, although it didn't seem like it today, be facing winter months before too terribly long. We recognize that any time you expand into a community and into a residential area, that zoning matters and matters of expansion are very important to our area residents. And we did hold a neighborhood meeting on the 25th of July, which was last week. We had some rather spirited discussion, which is part of the purpose for those meetings. We had 56 people who actually signed attendance to our meeting. I'm quite confident that we didn't obtain signatures from everyone. We believe there was more like about 70 people or so in attendance, and for a combination of reasons, we did not get all of those names recorded. I, too, have taken a number of phone calls, as was mentioned by Mr. Sorensen, from area residents and also people within the boundary that were requesting to rezone. Most of those questions were inquiries about particular questions or information that they desired, and we did our best to try and answer those questions, not only in the public meeting, but again, when those phone calls came. From the public meeting, I'd like to highlight just a very few of the things that were voiced by some of our neighbors and the people that attended. I think one, again, has already been addressed because the question was asked, if I'm within this boundary, do I have to include my property in the rezone? And as you've heard, the people who own property within this boundary that we're requesting do not have to be a part of the rezoning if they elect not to, and Sanford will not object to anyone who wants to be outside of the zoning request. As was mentioned by the city, I too have not received any requests either in the public meeting that we held the other night or since then by phone or other methods of anyone that requested to opt out at this point. Another question that we dealt with the other night, or a concern, was will I be forced to sell my property if I'm within this rezoning request? And of course, we have no ability to force anyone to sell a property, nor would we have an interest in trying to force someone to sell a property. So the answer, of course, is no. We did hear significant concerns raised by neighbors and people, frankly, not only just in the area we're asking to rezone, but in property areas that we have in other parts surrounding our campus about the condition of some of our rental properties. As you know, we have somewhat limited ability to control how people care for properties when they rent them, although there certainly are things that we can do and are willing to do. And we've had conversations with the company that actually manages those properties for us and asked them to step up their efforts in terms of meeting with those renters, making regular visits to those properties, and correcting anything that they can correct. We've also asked the neighborhood to please let us know specifically if there's some area or some problem with the property that we should be aware of in case we have the ability to address that. I was also going to comment on Menlo Park, but that was addressed earlier. That is not part of this rezone request. There was a question directly to the east. In fact, I believe it's outside of the area that we're asking to rezone. There was a gentleman that spoke that lived in that area and told us that that property, or that area, excuse me, is a bowl or has an area of grade that's lower perhaps than the areas around it. And there were concerns about runoff and about water retention, etc. We met with the Public Works Department this week and received a report from the city engineers. I don't speak for those folks, but I can tell you that with the best management practices that are required in any building project or any parking lot project, etc., that Sanford Health will meet or exceed any of those requirements. And again, not speaking for the city, but recognizing that the information we were given is that they were comfortable with the fact that as long as we follow those guidelines that are established by the city for drainage, that there shouldn't be a problem in that area. I'm sure someone could address that further if you have further questions. One other topic that we covered in the meeting, and this is again away from the area that we're asking to rezone. We were questioned about the condition of 17th Street between Grange Avenue west to West Avenue. And that street is reported, and frankly, I've driven on it a number of times. I know it to be in kind of rough condition. There was a major sewer pipe placed underneath that street a couple years ago. And again, in conversation with Public Works, they believe there's been settling there, and that street has, as a result, has deteriorated. I was also told by them that work to resurface and recondition that road will begin in the spring of 2013. We are certainly proud of our campus. We're proud of our reputation of meeting the needs of the healthcare of this region and certainly of this community. We strive to provide extraordinary patient care and extraordinary experiences. And with that, I'll end my comments and be happy to try and take questions if you have any.
Thank you, Mr. Cheddar. Commissioners, would you have any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Cheddar, I'm curious, not too far down the line, these homes that are currently rentals are going to be either moved or destroyed in place of your construction plans. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. I'm curious, do you have any plans for what to do with some of those houses rather than just destroy them?
That's a very good question, and I appreciate that because we have faced that a number of times around our campus as we have grown and expanded, et cetera. First of all, we've spent a fair amount of time looking about the possibility of relocating homes. Is it possible to move houses, move them to a different area where they could be used again? In most cases, now we have some exceptions where we actually have allowed houses to be moved or participated in moving houses, but in most cases we've discovered that the cost of doing so is generally prohibitive, and rather than doing that, we are using those properties for a variety of reasons, including working with agencies like Habitat for Humanity and other not-for-profit entities that come in and take from those properties everything that's salvageable and usable and moving that into the areas where they're building either new homes or renovating other homes and taking advantage of the properties that are within them so that there is salvage, that there's value in those homes. Along with that, we have worked with both the city police and fire departments and including the sheriff's department, and they have used a number of these properties for training exercises prior to the demolition of those homes. What we're discovering, and we had discussion earlier today, and I'm going to have to look for his name, but the gentleman that's responsible for housing in the community, I apologize, I just cannot call his name, I've got it here, but in that discussion, basically we asked the question, are we displacing people so that they don't have places to live? And the answer was, we don't feel that way at all. In fact, what we're doing is we're relocating people from an area where they are somewhat being displaced by these homes that are being raised, and they're moving into areas where either new homes are being built or other properties are available. And if you'd like, I can dig for his name. I'm sorry, I just don't have it in memory.
I don't think that's necessary, but it would be encouraging to me at least to know that some of these homes at least could be used for low-income housing, which is a pent-up need that I think we have in this community. And this might be a fine place to begin.
Understood.
Would there be any other questions for Mr. Cheddar?
Mr. Chair, OT, how were the 13 property owners that are in the PD contacted?
We notified them by letter. I apologize for not making that plain. We did contact the folks that live within the boundary that we're asking to rezone by letter. In addition to that, we sent the same notification, the same letter to people whose property borders the exterior of what we're asking to be rezoned. I believe that total number was 36 or 38 letters that we sent notifying those people of the fact that we have applied for a rezoning request, that we'd submitted that application, and also notifying them that we were holding the public meeting.
And of the 13, how many of them came to the public meeting?
I'm not sure that I know that. I know there were a number of them there. Again, in looking at the list of people who signed in, that's frankly one thing that I didn't record. I'm sorry.
Okay, I was just curious as to how many of the 13, besides the letter, had some sort of personal contact, either through a phone call from them to you or through the public meeting.
I did have a number of those folks call me indicating that, hey, we can't make the meeting that particular date and time. Can you help us understand the request, et cetera? As far as how many attended physically, I'm sorry, I just don't know.
Okay, thanks.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions for Mr. Cheddar? If not, thank you. Before I ask for input from the audience, I'm wondering, I believe I heard that Kyle from Director of Equalization Office is here. And I'm wondering if you'd be good enough and maybe answer a couple questions that might be in some of the people that are here tonight's mind.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Kyle Helseth. I'm the Director of Equalization for Minnehaha County. Any questions, I'll be more than glad to answer.
Jesse, would you like to follow up with, I'm trying to remember, if this were to be permitted, will this affect anyone's valuation any different than what it is right now as a single family?
No, sir. The most direct effect on anyone's valuation within the county are sales. If there are sales of property within here that show that the values go up, we can conceivably raise their values. If there are sales of privately owned property within here that go down, it'll have the same effect on those properties.
When you guys do that appraisals, how do you factor in, I might be willing to pay more for a piece of property than maybe what the general public might feel it's worth? Would a sale like that impact the existing properties that are?
It's an age-old adage that one sale does not make the market. Okay. We have to see a trend before we'll make any changes.
Okay. The properties that currently own, being rented,
yes,
they're being taxed just like anybody's properties are being taxed?
Yes, sir, they are.
When this becomes part of the campus, does that tax structure change?
There has to be an application made to the county commissioners, and they will act on that the second week of March every year, but only until then. They have to present testimony and evidence that that property, when it changed, is now being used for its principal occupation, the healthcare industry. Until then, it remains taxed. As a little note, Sanford, in and of itself, is the second largest taxpayer in Minnehaha County. They pay approximately $1.5 million in taxes. So they own a lot of property that's not tax exempt.
How does that happen? Are they paying tax on that hospital as it sits there today?
Certain portions of it they are.
Certain portions?
Portions that are rented out to other doctors who are not part of the Sanford team. And we sit down with them every year to go over what is being rented, what is being leased, what is being used for their principal, the healthcare industry, whether or not it's one of their wellness centers, whether it's one of their clinics. We go over those every year.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. Would there be any other questions for Kyle?
Nope.
Kyle, thanks. Stick
Thank
around.
you.
There might be some other questions that come up.
Yes, I'll be here.
Having said that, is there anyone here in the audience that would like to address item number 10?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Scott Allen. I am a vice president of the Pettigrew Heights Neighborhood Association. And even though technically I don't live in the neighborhood that we're talking about here, my connection with that neighborhood is, and I'll be as brief as I can here, my grandfather and my grandfather's brother built a house on South Waltz in that neighborhood, and I would like to really say that I know there are a number of people that live in that neighborhood that have been there for practically all their lives and even generations. And I would really like to say that I would like to preserve that just for historical reasons, and I would like to say that neighborhood means a lot to me, because when I was growing up, that's where we went and visited Grandma and Grandpa. So anyway, and real quickly, I would also like to ask a question that when the Avera people over on the east side of town, when they expanded south, they took a whole neighborhood and they moved the houses. I don't understand why they could afford it, and Sanford says they can't afford that, to move the houses. They put houses out, and I don't know the neighborhood. I'm sorry, I don't have that on top of my head. but they moved houses south of the Vera McKinnon Hospital, and the gentleman from Sanford just said that that was unaffordable. I don't understand that. I'm sorry, I just don't understand that. But I would like to preserve that neighborhood on just historical purposes, and because I know that in fact one of my mother's groomsmen, when my mom and dad got married in 1945 here in Sioux Falls, one of their groomsmen is still living in the neighborhood. He's been living there for 56 years. And he lives by Menlo Park. And, you know, he is, I would just like to preserve this neighborhood.
Scott, thanks for coming down tonight
Yes.
and sharing that with us.
Okay,
It,
thank you.
took a little effort to come down. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address item number 10?
Mr. Chairman, council members, my name is Bob Severson. I live at 1124 West 20th, and I am one of the 13 privately owned. Mr. Chairman, I have, what I'd like to do is I have quite a few questions, and I try to slip an opinion in there, but after that, I have a recommendation on how you should proceed. I've kind of stolen the name from Thomas Edison. I call myself the Sage of Menlo Park. I've lived there for a long time. If a private business came to you and said, I'd like to rezone 4 square blocks. I need a little parking. I may or may not build a building on this. What would your attitude be? You say, well, no, we need more detailed, you know. Just tell me what, you know, what it's going to be. You're going to destroy 50 homes, and as a board, it seems to me, you would say, tell us a little bit more about this proposition. Now, I'm concerned if they rezone and make this area part of the campus for Menlo Park, it will be completely surrounded by Sanford property. And it seems to me that on a campus, you could refigure streets to your parking and buildings, and they would have a reasonable request to vacate streets. It's their campus. The history of that area, I'm not sure. It's an older neighborhood, and I'm sure you could make a case for their history. But I'll tell you that there is a historic. It's a wall on Menlo Park. It was built with Sioux Falls, or this area's rock, and it was built by the WPA. And we have to be assured, it seems to me, that that's preserved. And just the accessibility of that park surrounded by campus also should be. In my own case, I don't care if it's rezoned or not. It seems to me my choices don't change. The block I live in is completely owned by the hospital, with the exception of one house, mine. So my choice doesn't change whether it's rezoned or not. My choice is to live surrounded by cars in a parking lot or selling to Sanford. Now, I've been in conversation with people from that hospital about buying my home. And I must say, they've been fair. Some might say that they've been more than generous. But I've got to tell you that I'm comfortable in that house. I've lived there 57 years. I particularly enjoy my front porch. I read my newspaper there, and I watch the activities in the park. I watch people walk their dogs. And the choice I have then is a difficult one. Although it might be time for me to move on, I recognize that. But now for my suggestion. My suggestion is that what's the hurry? My suggestion, my recommendation is you defer action on this proposal. You get Mr. Sanford at a meeting to come here, or Mr. Kavanaugh, or both, and tell you what their intentions are. What they should be asked that the concerns of the neighbors, shouldn't there, is it possible that there be a corridor with a berm or flowers or fountain? The example I give of the hospital doing something right is in front of the children's hospital. There's fountains there. Now, is it possible, in a future meeting that I'm suggesting, that there might be a conditional use permit, that you negotiate those things, that there could be a buffer between the neighbors that are rightly concerned about the decreasing values. Could you assure them that there might possibly be a buffer between their property and the parking lot? And there's another thing, that there's a monkey in the room. It's speculation that campus is going to extend from Minnesota Avenue to West Avenue between 18th and 22nd Street. That's mind-boggling. And I guess you compete with Mayo Clinic. I guess that's a good thing. But there are nostalgic people like me that are not quite sure. But my suggestion is, what's the hurry? Let's examine this thing a little bit. Let's talk to that hospital and see if possibly they might make a concession or two to answer the concerns of their neighbors. Thank you for your attention. And I guess I exceeded the 5 minutes, and I apologize for that.
Bob, you're articulate as always. You live in house number 6, if I'm not mistaken, on the chart right across the street from the park.
I live at 1124 West 20th for 57 years.
Thank you.
And thank you very much.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the commission regarding item number 10?
My name is Dave Heckenlively. I live at 1211 South Summit, 21st and Summit. I've lived there since 1986, and this area is prone to flooding. As Mr. Cheddar had mentioned, I had said that at the meeting last week, and part of the system that takes the sewer water away from there is it uses 19th Street, and it also uses ironically, Prairie, Waltz, and Menlo, because the high point is 22nd and Grange. The high point is there, and all the water uses Prairie, Waltz, Menlo, and Grange as the water heads north toward 19th Street, where the inlets are on that sewer system. And it's my concern is that we put a parking lot in there, the parking lot might flood. Just with the way the typographical of the area there. You may not have our area flood on Summit and Duluth, which it did. We had 30 inches of water at the intersections of 21st and Summit in 2004. They came out with a transit and said there was 30 inches of water in we had Lake Menlo, for lack of a better word. And my concern is that you might have this parking lot full of water. Just the way the lay of the land is. So that was one of my concerns I wanted to talk to you about. And the second one is, I agree with what Bob said. Don't you have to have some kind of a certain plan when somebody comes and wants to rezone the property? I noticed on one of the other things you had a laundry list there of about 10 different things they thought they were going to put in that area. Well, which one is it? Is it going to be a building? Is it going to be parking? What is it exactly that it's going to be? Because this is the process where it all begins. This particular thing where you're rezoning it. Well, what is it that they're going to put in there? And the third thing I just wanted to say was this area. It's like 30 blocks. It's our neighborhood. From Minnesota to Grange and from 18th to 22nd Street. This is our neighborhood, and you're taking half of it away. Literally half of it away. So I'd like to see you not approve this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jay. Mr. Schmidt, you want to
clarify or not clarify? We'll see how this goes. The neighbors have asked a couple of times about rezoning and land uses. I've put up on the screen, when Sanford rezones an area, they're bringing it into this listing, and it says uses permitted. These are the things that are allowed in their planned development district: a hospital, a medical clinic, a medical school, a medical office, a daycare center, a heliport, a commercial parking lot or parking ramp, emergency vehicle storage garage, hotel, motel, or inn, a residential use, and then we've amended it this time to include a public recreational facility, park, or a public utility facility, water tower, or something like that, okay? The clarification I wanted to bring, that is pretty typical. That's what a PD, that's very specific to Sanford. Otherwise, this is where, again, planning commission's used to this, but I don't think the public is, and I wanted to make sure. If you were zoned RS2, and you can see that later down, zoning classifications for S institutional, or RS2, people go, yeah, I know I'm residential, but you deal with this frequently. And people go, when I'm zoned RS2, then it's just residential, correct? No, in an RS2 residential district, you can also have a group home and an assisted living center and a church and a school. And when they rezone something to RS2, they don't have to say, and I'm just going to build single-family houses or a church or a school. They get a full listing of the things that they can build there. So that's the way our laws are set up in Sioux Falls, is once they zone the land, they don't tell us, and they don't have to tell us by the law. They have the flexibility to say, here's the listing of things I can do. And that's just the way our process is set up. So again, Sanford, Vera, Augustana, any of the USF, they come in with a list of things that they can build in their zoning districts. So I hope that helped this last
Jeff,
two.
before you sit down, this is how big a site?
8 acres.
8 acres. If the zoning is in place, And provided it's not, whatever they're doing is not more than 1 acre, they can go down and get a building permit and do any of these things on this list, provided what they're doing is not larger than 1 acre at the time they're doing it.
Yes, the second page of their zoning district says, here's the density requirements, their height restrictions, other regulations. Development with this sub-area will be designed and built in compliance with, and a final development plan shall be required for all, I'm reading with my glasses too.
I can't read it
Yeah,
either.
a final development plan shall not be required for accessory uses, including surface parking lots and areas, elevated walkways, and signs which are in accordance with. Everything else on that list requires a final development plan. That's a very good clarification, Mr. Chairman. If they come in with a hospital, a hotel, a clinic, that request has to go before this body. So other than the things that are not required for final development plan, those clinics, those hospitals, anything else would have to come before this body with a plan for parking, for landscaping, for lighting, for signage. Those details all have to be worked out at this body, at this public hearing. Signs would be posted, and we'd have a public hearing.
Let's just walk through that list so there's no misunderstanding. Hospital would be allowed.
Is allowed with a final development plan.
Right, they'll come back
Yes,
with the
ma'am.
final plan.
Yep.
So everything on that list they'll come
Correct.
back to.
Yep. Everything on that list that they're allowed to do, showing up here on the screen right now, they have to come back before this body and have another public hearing and explain and show the details, just like they did with the Heart Hospital, the Children's Care Hospital. I mean, all those buildings that they built out there, they came back before this body.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
That clears it up for me. Any other questions right now for Jeff from any of the other commissioners?
Yeah, Jeff, I have one more clarification on the drainage that Dave is concerned about.
Yes.
We often hear about these situations where there's an existing drainage issue that somebody's going to redevelop the land. The reality for them is when this happens that the drainage issue will probably get better for them because from what I understand, even though the concern is that they're going to put in surface area parking lot, that will displace the water, that the water has to be contained within the boundaries of what it is that they're doing and they can't displace any greater or significant amount of money or water, off that land.
That's correct, and then I'll restate it too, because it's absolutely correct. As he mentioned, in 2004 and I think in 2008 and 2009 in July, we had extremely large rainfalls too, and they've probably had rainfall problems in this area. Snow melt and rainfall bring issues to Sioux Falls in the core of our community. When development takes place, as the chairman, Kenny Dunlap, mentioned on that last project, if a project comes through, they have to improve water, sewer, sanitary sewer, curb and gutter, and drainage with a building permit. So when they do a parking lot improvement or a hospital or a hotel or a park, they will have to bring plans in, have to be reviewed by our engineering department and meet engineering design standards for all those projects. So you're correct. It will be a better project in the long run than it is today.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jeff? Jeff, thank you. Is there anyone else here that would like to address item number 10? Please come forward.
My name is Sarah Alexander, and I live at 817 South Menlo, and that's 2 blocks north of the affected area, and I've lived there since 2008, and I had hoped to have some pictures that I've taken as I walk my dog often around this area, and I've taken pictures of the many times that homes have been destroyed, just so people could get a feel of it. Unfortunately, between my computer not allowing me to upload the pictures and this computer not allowing them to use a CD, we can't have the pictures. But I do want to say the first picture was how my kitchen window and I'm 2 blocks north of this area, completely changed with the Heart Hospital now dominates my kitchen window. So even though you're only talking about this sort of small area, I want to comment that this is quite a large area that all of this stuff affects, and it's really hard on our neighborhood. I feel I've watched the destruction of about at least 30 homes individually since I've lived there, and I've only lived there 4 years, but this has taken place in 2010 and 2009, 2008. It's very demoralizing to see these homes and to think about your own home, and will you do a long-term investment in it or not? Or because will it just end up at the end of a bulldozer? Now, I'd like us to think about a couple of things and ask you to challenge Sanford on some things. Consistently, they have said that they don't want to build multi-level parking lots. And they always say that it's because it's too expensive. Now, these were brought up in 2008 at the City Council meeting. These were brought up in 2009 at the Planning Commission. Why won't they build multi-level? And I just want to note that Sanford earned more than $30 million revenue over expenses in 2010. This is according to a nonprofit GuideStar reporting agency. So they, have $30 million that they have that they're not spending on expenses, and they tell us that it's too expensive to build a multi-level parking lot, and that just doesn't fly with me. And I think that a multi-level parking lot serves both employees of Sanford and patients better than these large parking lots where they have to walk, half a mile to get to their workplace. And I guess I frequently am walking my dog at night, and I feel perfectly safe in the neighborhood. But I see women, and I can tell when a woman is afraid that she's walking quickly to her car, and she's not afraid of me, but she's afraid because she's walking a long distance in an open parking lot that's lit, and, but it feels scary. Feel better going to a multi-level parking lot. And I prefer to go to a Vera when I have to visit someone in the hospital, because I can go to a multi-level and just walk right through on the skywalk to see whoever I'm going to see. So I really want you to be asking them more. Have they talked to their own employees about the advantages of a multi-level parking lot? And do they need to do a little more research on, is this a better option for them? Rather than these long, big parking lots. Another thing that I think you need to ask Sanford is, what have they done to decrease the numbers of cars in the area? I mean, this is a heavily trafficked area, and 7:30 in the morning, it's very difficult to cross the street. And according to Mr. Cheddar, he said that they offered free bus passes to their employees. Well, that's very good, but I don't think that's enough. And he said that it didn't work very well because the city moved the bus stops and this and that and the other thing. I agree, this is a city that doesn't use buses very easily, but there's other options that other institutions use, such as giving incentives to people for carpooling, giving incentives to people for biking, giving incentives to people for taking public transportation, or perhaps living near the area and walking to work. I mean, these are incredibly green, important solutions that many forward-thinking institutions and cities are working towards. And I don't see why we can't ask that of one of our largest and probably most progressive institutions in the city. Why aren't we asking this of them? We bear the price of this. We bear the traffic, we bear the loss of homes, we bear the loss of neighborhoods, we bear the loss of trees and grass and the feel of it. And nobody asked Sanford to pay for any of this, or to do anything for it. Additionally, some Sanford employees live in the neighborhood and walk to work. And I think one of the reasons you don't hear very much from those people are they're afraid. They can't go challenging their employer and saying, I don't like the way Sanford is expanding very easily. And it's very dangerous, perhaps, for them to come and talk about this. But they're the ones that are, in fact, doing the wonderful thing of living near the workplace and walking to work and caring about the neighborhood. And I think we have a lot of employees that actually live in this neighborhood area, and you probably are not hearing from them. I also want to say that this is a functioning neighborhood that is a nice corridor between the Pettigrew Heights neighborhood, which I am very active in and trying to make a better neighborhood, and they have no park in that neighborhood. And this corridor brings us to the Menlo Park. And Menlo Park is one of the few parks that's near us. And if this becomes flat parking lots that we have to walk by to get to the park, that's one, distasteful and unaesthetic, and two, the parking lots that need a lot of drainage, and I have walked around and around and around Sanford's campus, so I know this, the parking lots that need drainage, they often don't plant trees there. So we're losing trees, we're losing shade, and those parking lots become really hot, awful things. And I'm sure the employees don't like them either. So I think that solution really needs to be questioned on Sanford's part. Additionally, in 2009, Mr. Cheddar talked about a green space that they were thinking of providing, and that was when they took the area to the south of Sanford, all the way up to 26th, and they mentioned something about a green space. Well, where is this plan for the green space? We have not had any communication about this. We have not had any kind of openness around a plan or anything, and so I feel that if they're going to block the area to the park or block the way to the park or make it parking lots, we all need to rethink what green space we might want or need in this area that serves both Sanford employees who currently use the park to smoke and serves us who need a park. Maybe we have to rethink where that park is, and maybe that's something that for once Sanford could be thinking about our welfare rather than thinking about the land that we live on. That I really feel like they need to be thinking that way, which they do not now.
Thank you. How many more items do you have? And I don't mean to be rude, but
one more?
There might be other people that might want to.
I just would like you to be asking Sanford what it has done to work with the residents to make the neighborhood more livable. It's better for both of us if they work with us, and I don't feel they have worked with us at all. And finally, it is very discouraging to see all the homes lost. And it's nice if they go somewhere else. But in other cities, when many homes are lost like this to institutional development, the city expects them to replace those homes. In Boston, they replaced a whole bunch of homes with a housing complex for those people that lost homes. Institutions can't just creep into neighborhoods, buy up the property, and suddenly say it's ours. That just isn't done in other cities, and that's why it feels very unfair here to us. So thank you for listening, and I'll answer any questions if you want.
Thank you for coming and sharing some of those ideas with us. Thank you.
Sarah, I would like to address a couple of things. And as you may or may not, and many of you in the audience may or may not know, but our role here as this body is to talk about land use. And though I know many of you feel that this is not a proper land use, that's really our role here. It's not to dictate how a private business, once they acquire the land, what it is that they do with it.
But isn't a parking lot land use?
It is land
And
use.
I guess I'm saying there's two kinds of parking lots. And that, I can't think of a better place to talk about this.
I can see your point, but again, we as a land use body are not going to dictate to Sanford what or how they have to develop their parking space. It's just not how it's done. And I can appreciate that it's done differently in different cities, but it isn't done that way here.
You could say, we're not going to give you this rezoning because you haven't really done enough research. You haven't really made enough effort to look at this, because your responsibility is to think about how the land is used in Sioux Falls, right?
But that's the opinion of the neighbors, okay? And I appreciate that you're very, very passionate about it, as Sanford is very passionate about it. And
they're getting a good deal. And it's a very good deal for them. They pay very low prices for this land. They can do what they want with it, and we lose our neighborhood.
Sarah, let me finish what I'm going to say, though. And I think we just heard Bob say something a little bit different with that. But again, our role here is to discuss land use and what they do with the houses. I know that both institutions that do this have looked at a multitude of things to do with the housing. But again, that's not the role of this body and this commission. And there are other parts of the city that can take a look at that. and we don't know that they haven't already. But again, it's not the role of this. If you want to bring this up to the City Commission, I would strongly encourage you to do that. But our role as the City Planning Commission is to talk about the land itself. This land, this parcel of land, nothing beyond that, just this parcel of land. And does it make sense if Sanford is going to grow their campus as we know it to happen? Does it make sense for them to rezone this? And it does take time. And they just didn't dream this up last month that they're going to come and rezone this. Again, that's a long planning process as well. And believe me, talk to anybody that comes to City Hall, they'll tell you it's an incredibly long process. So that's what our role here is this body. And I know it's not going to make you happy, and I know it's not going to make most of you happy, but that's what we deal with. We deal with land use. So anything other than that has to go to a different part of the city and how it breaks down our hierarchy. But land use is what we deal with.
I'm going to give, thank you, a good discussion. Thank you for your thoughts. Guys, we've been dealing with this now for about 45 minutes, which is kind of standard for us as far as the length of time we'll take. I'm going to allow public testimony for one more individual. I think I see somebody on the edge of his chair there. Did you want to address the commission? And when we ask people to keep it to 5 minutes, that's not to stifle anyone. That's not to let everybody give their opinion. And I've been a little not lax, but Mr. Cheddar had some extra time, and I've tried to do that with you folks. The idea is there might be more people here that would like to comment. That's why we try to keep it at a 5-minute level. With that being said, go ahead, sir.
My name is James Jeffcoat. I live at 734 South Lake Avenue. And Sanford has moved in on me. They own a house right next to me. They say they want to put 16th Street all the way through. That would give them a corridor. Although I own half of 16th Street where I live, they're going to have to take me too. Okay? Now, I'm concerned about this because I own my own home. I'm retired. I live on a specific income, and that's it. I have nothing more to live off of. If I were to move, I would have to have a house equivalent to what I have now, if not more, because a house doesn't deteriorate if you live in it and keep it up. It's supposed to be worth more. And I've lived there approximately 7 to 8 years. I was here before Sanford started coming across 17th Street from Grange all the way across to west. Now, I would like to see what Sanford has in the big picture. How much land do they actually own? And that's considering what A1, I think it is, or is it AAA, or some realty company that's behind them or works for them that buys homes up and then they buy them from them. They say they don't own all of these homes, but they do. They own a lot more than what people realize, just like this area that they're in right now. Square that property off, square it off, and I'll bet you they're about 50% owned by other people and 50% owned by Sanford. They don't draw a square picture. But I will tell you, you take a walk down Lake Avenue and take a look at the houses from 17th Street down to 16th Street, and I'll guarantee you'll know the houses that are owned by the people that live there compared to the people that are renting from Sanford or from their realty company that owns them. They're deteriorated bad. You look in their backyards and the weeds are as tall as my waist, if not higher. They say they haven't gone beyond 16th Street. They have. How many more homes do they own back there beyond 16th Street going north? I'd like to see what their big picture is, number one. And I would like to see how many homes they actually own. Number two, and that's considering the ones that the realty company that works for them also owns, that lease them out until Sanford's ready to move that area. Now, this is just a foothold in the east side of them. They're going to expand beyond that. They're going to go north. They're going to go south. It's there. It's in the makings already. They just didn't cover that much area. This is just a foothold for the people that live there around there now. My kids, I lived on Norton Avenue between 22nd and 23rd. I raised my family there. We came down to Menlo Park and played soccer on that field that's now a tennis court. But when soccer first got started in Sioux Falls, I was their soccer coach, and that was our field to play in. That's the closest we could find a place to play. I hate to see this area all tore up. All the people moved out, the houses moved out. Now, Sanford could build up. They just don't want to because they say it's too costly. But like the lady said, they made a good share of money. And they have a good share of money to build up. They just don't want to. They would rather tear out the houses, destroy the areas where people already have single-family dwellings and houses. My neighborhood now has no kids in it. None. They tore down the school that was up the street 2 blocks away and made that a park. Sanford owns across the street from us, which is now Make-A-Wish and Ronald McDonald House. And the houses are still standing, but Sanford owns them all except for one in that block. And they're deteriorating too. They can't even get people to rent some of them because the dogs have been in and out of there so many times that I wouldn't even want to go in the house. I've seen the bug people go in and spray them all the time.
Jim, enough. We know how you feel, I think.
Okay. But
I appreciate you coming up and making some comments.
Okay. But the lady here, she had some good comments. Yeah. And I think you ought to take what they say is to, besides just Sanford. Sanford is a big corporation, yeah. But they can build up. They can build a parking lot up instead of out.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
This young lady here's been waiting. We're going to allow her comments, and then we're going to cut it off for public information.
I walk fast, then I get more than 5 minutes. I think much of what I would say is going to be what some of the other people have said. And the main reason I'm up here is that one of the TV commercials uses the word priceless. Neighborhoods are priceless. We cannot replace this kind of neighborhood environment anyplace else in the city limits. It has history. It has families that have grown from it. It has a park where I walk through because I work over at Sanford and I walk through that area every day I go to work, except today I needed the car to get down here. The park gets used by little kids, by their parents, by big kids. There are about 6 young high school kids playing basketball there when I walk through it tonight. It's a valuable piece of city property, and city uses the marketing tool for the city. One of the items is the green space that we have and the parks that we have, and that system of helping youth find a place to play. That's one of the valuable pieces. It will be surrounded, and I can't imagine parents feeling comfortable letting their kids go to this park when this gets absorbed into the Sanford system. One of my reasons for being here is to encourage us to change the zoning of this area, and I'm not sure what the zoning is of the North American Baptist Seminary section that Sanford owns, if that needs to be changed. I have proposals in my head that could be used for that. Going back to one of the main things that people have been talking about, using parking ramps, going up can eliminate taking this neighborhood away. There could be a parking ramp on the existing ramp just to the west of the Menlo Park on Grange Avenue. There could be a new parking ramp right in the center between Medical Building 1 and the medical school. It could also be going up at least 6 stories, because that's what the present clinic or the present hospital is. Plus it has a story and a half below. So that gives many options that could be done instead of destroying a neighborhood and destroying in turn the area that goes on around that neighborhood, because it will change. The atmosphere will change, especially if you put up a parking lot. It gets hot. But building up instead of building out is a much better idea in my mind for your use of your dollars, for your use of your transportation routes that are coming into that area, and for patients who are coming in from anywhere around the city or outward. Mayo Clinic has their big clinic building, and I haven't been back there since I graduated in 65, excuse me. But their main clinic building where we did our training, I don't remember if it was 20 or 23 stories high. I know that isn't allowed under this zoning system that we have now. Maybe we need to change that zoning system and that zoning requirement for this area. Build up, and you can be much more ecologically proficient than building out, having another little clinic here, having another little clinic there. Why don't we centralize it? Why doesn't Sanford centralize it into several parking ramps going up, clinic building or 2 going up, an education building going up on the Baptist or the seminary property? So, excuse me, so that up is much better for this area, for this kind of institution, than to keep absorbing and snipping away at a neighborhood, no matter where it might be.
Thank you for sharing some of those ideas with us.
And I have some suggestions for the top floor of the parking lot could be turned into a level area.
Could you put those in writing and send those to Jeff Schmidt at our planning office?
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I don't believe she identified.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't identify myself. Evelyn Greasy, Griesse. I live at 1816 South Norton, but I go just about like that to get to work.
Thank you, Evelyn.
Yep.
Evelyn, just a couple of comments back for you.
Oh, sorry.
And this kind of tags off what Commissioner Schmidt said is, you know, we're a land use body, and we can't and don't dictate that people build 2 or 3 or 4 story houses. If we told you that, you'd probably get mad at us. Same way we wouldn't dictate to Sanford, you have to build a 2 or 3 or 4 story parking lot. If it's parking lot, that's the land use, and it's up to them to decide how they want to construct their parking lot.
I have to get a better concept of what the board uses as you're governing land use. I'm not sure I can't figure out what that term or phrasing means. And I may have to look up in your bylaws and things to see what it means.
Oh, when you're done, we're going to have Mr. Schmidt come up and explain it to you and everybody here, because he's excellent at it.
Okay.
Thank you, Evelyn. Jeff, would you make a stab at that?
I put it up on the screen again, and Nick did a very good job. When we say residential, we don't explain to people how they build their houses. You know, we have building code, so it's health and safety issues, but we don't say that you has to be a split level or a foyer. They just build the house. So again, Evelyn, here's the list. They can build a hospital, they can build a commercial parking lot or a parking ramp, but that's what it says. It doesn't say that they have to build a 2-story hospital or a 23-story hospital. It's just they can build a hospital. Same thing goes back to the City of Sioux Falls. When we say build a park, we say you can build a park. It doesn't say a park with a slide or a park with a swing set. It's a park. If it's a swimming pool, That's all the things that we get to decide about. So we decide the land use, the general philosophy of these things that are up there.
What's our role in this process?
Our role is staff is giving you a recommendation that we should move forward to approve this as a planned development district. It makes sense as a land use. As you continue to look at this, you've been saying that does it make sense to continue to expand to the east with these land uses? If it doesn't make sense to expand with these land uses, you would recommend denial.
Jeff, thank you.
Jeff, and I just want to clarify, just because the city recommends something doesn't always mean that the Planning Commission rubber stamps what it is that you recommend.
Absolutely, another good point. Okay, this is an advisory board that goes to City Council. You can deny it tonight, and it can go forward to City Council. You can approve it tonight, and it can go forward to City Council. Whatever the decision makes tonight still goes forward to City Council. And again, if it's approved tonight, it can be approved at City Council, or it can be a split vote either way too. You're just making a recommendation to City Council.
Thank you, and I hope everybody has a clear understanding of that. We have been on this issue for over an hour, which is typically longer than we do. I'm sorry, I've been seeing hands and people that want to come back up and talk again. That's part of the reason we try to hold these to 5 minutes, so more people can talk. No more testimony. I'm going to move for committee action on this. As chair, I would look for a motion on item number 10.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a recommendation to approve item number 10 for a rezone.
We have a motion. Would there be a second? Motion by Schmidt.
Second by Sershin.
We have a motion and a second. This is our time for discussion and to maybe explain to some of the folks here why we think what we think and why we vote the way we vote. And I would sure appreciate everybody's input for the people sitting here tonight as to how you look at this and how you're going to vote on it. I think everybody's kind of deserves that. Commissioner Schmidt.
Kenny, every month as I sit up here, I'm impressed with the passion and the drive that our community has in ensuring that we have good neighborhoods and good services available throughout the city of Sioux Falls. And I so appreciate that they take the time, that they do the research, and they come and share with us what their concerns are about whatever it is that we're speaking about tonight. And whether it's hospitals or daycares or housing developments, we all live and work in this community and want it to be the absolute best that it can. And we play just one small part in ensuring that happens. And that is to guide under the guides of our 2035 plan or 2015 plan, whatever it has been set out prior to us as to what that looks like. And that's where we draw our conclusions from as to what is the plan, what are these neighborhoods, what do we envision them being. We may not like that neighborhoods get bigger with institutional, but we've heard a lot of conversation tonight about the Pettigrew Heights neighborhood, and we've just saw yesterday that an area that, yes, we love the historic, but it doesn't always hold forever. Things change, and that's the only thing we know for sure, is that something's going to change. And just as Pettigrew Heights is undergoing those changes, we see that happen within the core of the city every day. Just as they said, Augustana, USF, Avera, the Baptist Seminary, things change within the core too. So just because we've looked at something forever since we moved there, our expectation is that that's not going to change. But unfortunately, it does happen. Things change. How we do business today in Sioux Falls is not the same way it was 15 years ago or 20 years ago. We didn't have cell phone shops. We didn't have medical clinics on every corner. Things change. And it's just our simple little part here is to help guide that change. As Jeff said, whatever happens here tonight, it's going to go to the city council. Again, I am grateful for all of you that have showed up here tonight because I know that you are passionate about where it is that you live and work. Doesn't mean that we even disagree with some of what it is you're saying. But as a land use, overall, big picture, what do we think?
Thank you, Jesse. Nick?
Yep. I think I agree with pretty much everything Jesse said, that, you know, if you want to see something stay the same, the only way to make sure that happens is to buy whatever it is you want to stay the same. I have a difficult time telling somebody else what they should do with property that they own. Maybe just my philosophy and the way I look at things, but if you want it to stay historical or preserved or the way it is right now, buy what's out there, and then you can keep it that way, just like we wouldn't. And then I guess we don't dictate to people how they build their homes, as Jeff said, what appliances or fixtures go in. We can't dictate to businesses the same thing, that you have to build a 2-story parking garage or a 7-story parking garage or a parking garage that has pink lines painted on it. Those aren't land use issues. That's not what we look at. And I, like Jeff said, as you're looking through, does it make sense for Sanford to be able to expand to the east in this area? I have to say it does.
Thank you, Nick.
Mr. Chairman, the previous two speakers have said basically what I've been thinking here for the last almost an hour. The people out here that came to speak to us today did so very, very passionately, with good information, and you know that they did their homework, and I appreciate that. It's tough when growth and progress seems to infringe upon that which we have known for so long to be ours. But this is what's happening to this city. We are growing. We are progressing. My daughter, about 20 years ago, when she was still in junior high, she said, "Dad, I don't want Sioux Falls to get bigger. I like it the way it is right now." She was probably 12 years old. And I told her, I said, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. And I think that's where we're at today when we take on issues such as this. My heart is with all of you folks, but I know what has to be done, and what has to be done is to pass this.
Thank you. Steve?
I agree with the previous comments made by the other commissioners, and would just thank the neighbors for coming and speaking passionately about what they believe in. Again, we have to follow the rules and the guidelines of the commission and look at this only as land use, and it's been stated as to what we need to do. So that's all I have.
Any other discussion, councils? Steve?
The only thing I had was there's only one person that lives in this area that talked, that lives within this area that talked to us. Everybody else was from did not live in this district. So I don't know if they were here or, as Mr. Cheddar said, how many of them showed up for the other ones, but they still do have that option. If they do not want to, they can opt out of this by signing a piece of paper that they have up there. So, like I said, that I didn't hear from, maybe they didn't have the time to talk. It was being used up by people that didn't live in the space that is concerned. So, again, I'm really in agreement with what's going to happen.
Thank you, commissioners. I appreciate you guys giving everyone your opinions and how you're thinking on this. The folks that spoke tonight, it's very obvious you're very passionate about the neighborhood. I appreciate that. Bob, we have seen you at some of these meetings before, and you are the sage of Menlo Park. Good to see you down here again tonight. All in favor of item number 10 will signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item number 11. Russ, item number 11.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, members of the audience at home, my name is Russ Sorensen with the City Planning Office. This is item 11, which is a major amendment request to Subarea C of the West 57th Street District Number 2 Plan Development Zoning District to revise the initial development plan to allow for future multiple family housing. The general location of this subject property is at the southwest corner of West 58th Street and South Rolling Green Avenue. It comprises of about 9.1 acres. The West 57th Street District Number 2 was created by the City Council in their action in 1997 for a large mixed land use of multifamily residential, office, and business park development uses. 6 final development plans for the office and multifamily residential uses have been approved by the Planning Commission since the initial creation of 1997. The underlying zoning classification for this zoning development are proposed to remain the same as previously zoned, except that the sub-area boundaries for sub-area A and C are to be realigned in order to create a larger area for future multifamily residential uses. There will be no additional changes necessary to the existing sub-area regulations. Only the boundary areas would be realigned. Any new buildings for additional building within this PD would require final development plan approval by the Planning Commission. We received one call from an adjoining property owner requesting information, but he did not express any objection to the request. Because the subject application is for an expansion of the allowed uses and subsequent final development plans are required for review by the Planning Commission, staff is recommending approval of this major amendment request. And specifically, you'd say, well, what is this expansion area? The expansion area of sub-area A to the south would provide about 157 additional units for a total of 310 units within this PD. That concludes staff's report, unless there are questions.
Russ, thank you so much. Any questions for Russ? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
Is the petitioner here?
Good evening, Craig Lloyd, 3130 West 57th Street, Suite 201.
Mr. Lloyd, we haven't seen you down here.
Well, I missed you.
Are you all moved into your new office down on the
Yes.
river now? Good, congratulations.
Thanks. It's great to be downtown.
Anything you want to add to the report that Russ just
No, Russ always does a great job, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And these are basically townhouse design units, so they're going to look like single family or a townhouse type atmosphere. So,
would there be any questions for Craig from any of the commissioners? Thank you, Craig.
thank you.
Is there anyone else here in the audience that would like to address item number 11? Seeing none, I'd look for commission action.
I'd move approval.
Pearson?
Pearson.
We have a motion. There be a second?
I will second. Dequire.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. I see Meredith, Mr. Larson has come back and joined us again. Seeing none, all in favor will signify by saying yes.
Yes. Yes.
All opposed? Item number 11 passes. Number 12.
Is the applicant here for item number 12?
I don't think so.
Seeing no one here, I'll make a motion to defer item number 12.
Quick question. How many times do we defer before we stop doing that?
That was my question also.
That's an excellent question. I think we actually have a policy going back to when Russ was still staff versus before he got. Generally 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
Okay, it's not a set requirement, but at this point, this third one, we will go back to him and say, you either need to withdraw or we will deny your application. So.
Get off the schneid.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff. Do we need a motion for and second for deferral?
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to defer item number 12.
Larson.
Gaspar, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor will signify by saying yes.
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 All opposed? Item number 12 is deferred. Item number 13.
Thank you. Item number 13 is a conditional use permit. This is to allow an on-sale alcohol establishment. This application is requesting to provide on-sale alcohol as an accessory use to the existing packaged liquor store. It's in the C3 business district, and it is in the downtown district. The adjacent properties are a city parking lot, an office building, and a pub. All of them are compatible in our classifications. It's at 330 down on First Avenue. Staff notes that Carroll Institute, a substance abuse prevention and treatment facility, is located north of the subject property. We have had a couple phone calls on this, but at the same time, this did already come through the process at Planning Commission for conditional use previously. When it came through and was approved by this body previously back in January, February of this year, we put a stipulation on the applicant to only have complimentary on sale. They could only do small complimentary services, okay? This is a new request with a new condition. Their condition that they're requesting at this point is that the permit is approved for consumption of full servings of alcohol beverages, provided that on-sale consumption of alcohol beverages is an accessory use. The primary use of the premises will continue to be a packaged liquor store. The second condition is that the applicant must secure the appropriate on-sale alcohol license from the City of Sioux Falls. So again, just to clarify, they will remain the business that they are right now. They also continue to have this conditional use in place, but the condition was for complimentary service. They don't want just complimentary. They want to be able to serve and sell full service of drinks, okay? And it's really beer and wine that they want to be able to serve. So again, the applicant's here to answer those questions, but that's the condition, is for consumption of full servings of alcoholic beverages.
Questions for Mr. Schmidt?
Mr. Chair, Jeff, this would not be significantly different than a restaurant with the on sale, where the primary use is still something other.
Thanks for that clarification. That's absolutely correct, because the primary use is something and their accessory is just the on sale. A restaurant, primary use is serving food, and then their accessory is just to serve a glass of alcohol. The way the applicants bring it forward to us also is this is a new trend in the industry, in the market. Hy-Vee does this, Cleaver's Market does this. A lot of markets do this where their primary use is a grocery store, but they have sale or complimentary service as an accessory. Mm-hmm. Salons do this now, jewelry stores do this, the accessory aspect of serving alcohol. Thank you.
Jeff, one.
Oh, just a second, Jeff. Yeah.
Sorry, how is then that enforced to ensure that it's a secondary aspect versus a primary? Or how is that defined and how does that get judged?
Secondary versus primary, yeah. We can look at sales tax receipts.
Okay. And there's some aspect within the city does that?
Correct, in regards to licensing and their permitting aspect.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Jeff? Seeing none, thank you, Jeff. Would the petitioner be here this evening?
Good evening. My name is Vince Jones. I'm an attorney at the Woods, Fuller, Schultz & Smith law firm at 300 South Phillips Avenue. Paul Damian is the petitioner on behalf of Epstein Property Management, LLC, and Sid's Crown Liquor. Paul wanted to be here tonight. It was important for him to be here. Unfortunately, he had an unforeseen scheduling conflict due to a family situation. So he could not be here, and he asked me to be here instead. I'm familiar with the situation. I got involved after the first time in front of this commission, so I wasn't here the first time around, but I did get involved with Mr. Schmidt and the rest of the planning department after that, and I was involved with this petition. So a couple of things, I'll keep it brief. The neighbors around Sid's have been informed. The first time around there was a letter sent. This time around there was another letter sent. Some of those were hand delivered. The primary concern amongst those who did express concern was that there would be some sort of bar atmosphere, and that's not the intent. I just want to make sure the commission understands that. It's not SID's intent to have a bar. The intent here is to be able to perform wine tastings, educational classes, events like that, and also to, if somebody comes in and wants to purchase a wine, then SIDS wants to be able to have the opportunity to provide a sample. So there was some discussion about comparing sales tax receipts and figuring out whether this was really an accessory use, and our anticipation is that it's not going to be anywhere close in receipts. So a couple other items I have. There are other wine retailers in town that have these types of conditional use permits or permissive uses. They don't have these types of restrictions. It's common in the industry. SID's intent in making this application is to remain competitive. And it was also important for, Paul wanted me to convey to you guys that this is part of the renovation of SIDS that's in process right now. If you've driven by the building, you can see there's been some pretty dramatic changes going on. At this point, it's at the outside of the building. It's going to be at the inside of the building. I don't know if you've seen some of those, or if you remember some of the drawings from the first presentation, but SID's been around a long time. If you guys have been in there, you kind of know what it's like in there, and there's going to be some big changes. So one of the planned renovations is an upscale wine tasting area inside the building, and this is part of that. So I said I'd keep it short. That was longer than I wanted to go, but I'm willing to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for this young fellow?
We, Mr. Chairman, we talked just a few minutes ago with a different subject about changing the environment and losing tradition, and my goodness, we're going to be losing an awful lot of tradition the way SID's plan is coming out. I might not even get to see a dusty bottle anymore.
Well, I'm sure that if you put in a special request, we could dust one up for you. So
I think it's going to be great when it gets done.
Any other questions for Vince? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else here this evening that would like to address this issue? Seeing none, Chair would entertain a motion on item number 13.
Mr. Chair, Gaspar makes a recommendation for approval with the two stipulations.
We have a motion. Would there be a second?
Can we make a second?
Go ahead.
A second to approve, declare.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor will signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? Motion passes. Let's see, the next thing on the agenda is adjournment.
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second by Gaspar.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor will signify by saying yes.
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 All opposed?
Yes, yes.
Meeting adjourned.